The Ferrari choked out mid-rev, stranding Joanna Sterling in the heart of Beverly Hills' gleaming showroom. Her fingers dug into the carbon fiber wheel, nails biting like desperate bids in a failing auction. She twisted the ignition, dead silence, save for the AC's mocking whisper and the rustle of 30 elite gazes turning predatory. Minor glitch, she projected through the open window, her smile a brittle facade cracking under the marble-echoed murmurs. Phones glinted like vulture eyes, capturing her unraveling poise. Victoria Carter lingered by the mahogany desk, her billionaire calm unbroken. But Joanna recognized that appraising tilt, the prelude to walking away from empires built on borrowed shine. The dash flickered erratically, temp steady, fuel primed, all systems mocking her with green lies. Yet the beast refused to stir, as if sensing her desperation. "Shall we pivot to the Lamborghini?" Victoria suggested, her tone laced with the velvet patience of those who never sweat deadlines. Joanna's blazer clung like a second skin, sweat tracing the spine of her carefully curated armor. This deal was her lifeline. Staff salaries, showroom lights, the fragile throne she'd clawed from nothing. Not crumbling here, not now. One last turn of the key, foot slamming the pedal in futile rebellion. Victoria's thumb grazed her phone, and Joanna knew. One tap, and it all vanished. 3 hours earlier, Ethan Mitchell had been invisible in the way only night shift workers knew how to be. His footsteps whispered across the showroom's marble as he guided his cleaning cart between million-dollar sculptures of speed and power. The antiseptic bite of glass cleaner mixed with the leather and metal perfume that luxury dealerships wore like expensive cologne. In the corner, 8-year-old Lily sat cross-legged on the cool floor, her sketchpad balanced on her knees. Her pencils scratched against paper with the focused intensity only children possessed, drawing cars with wheels bigger than their bodies and exhaust pipes that shot cartoon flames. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Ethan watched other fathers pull up in sensible sedans and practical SUVs, their children climbing out with backpacks and lunchboxes, heading home to dinners that didn't come from vending machines. His daughter glanced up from her drawing, following his gaze. "Daddy, why do you only clean the cars instead of fixing them?" Lily's voice carried that particular 8-year-old directness that could slice through any adult's careful defenses. "In my drawings, you're always making them better." Ethan's cloth slowed against the Ferrari's pristine hood. The question hung in the air like exhaust fumes, impossible to ignore and twice as toxic. He couldn't tell her the real reason he stayed invisible. That dreams died hard when medical bills piled higher than paychecks, when overqualified became another word for dangerous. The answer she deserved would have to wait for a world that didn't exist yet. An hour before dawn, the showroom belonged to Ethan and his secrets. He pulled the tablet from beneath his cleaning supplies, its screen casting blue light across his weathered hands. Months of data lived in this device. Thermal readings, acoustic signatures, diagnostic patterns he'd mapped during stolen moments between polishing chrome and emptying trash. The Ferrari beside him had been whispering problems for weeks. Temperature spikes at exactly 2,847 revolutions per minute, a harmonic vibration that appeared only when the intake manifold reached 73 degrees Celsius. His digital stethoscope had caught it 3 nights ago, a frequency that didn't belong, like a wrong note in an otherwise perfect symphony. His fingers moved across the tablet screen, adding tonight's readings to the growing database. Each entry was a breadcrumb toward understanding, a piece of a puzzle no one else seemed interested in solving. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Joanna's voice cut through the pre-dawn quiet like a blade. Ethan's hands moved with practiced speed, powering down the tablet and sliding it beneath a stack of microfiber cloths. The digital stethoscope disappeared into his tool belt with the smoothness of long practice. "Just finishing the detail work, Miss Sterling." He kept his eyes on the Ferrari's hood, where his reflection wavered in the perfect paint. "Wanted to make sure everything was perfect for the VIP event." She stepped closer, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown timer. Were those diagnostics tools? Since when does the night cleaner play with equipment worth more than his yearly salary? Ethan continued polishing, his movements steady and deliberate. Let her think what she wanted to think. Let her see cleaning supplies and minimum wage desperation instead of 15 years of mechanical knowledge refined in community college classrooms and late-night research sessions. "Just cleaning supplies, ma'am. Nothing fancy." But Joanna's eyes had already moved on, dismissing him the way people dismissed furniture, necessary but unworthy of real attention. She had no idea what she'd just interrupted, and that ignorance would cost her more than she could imagine. Time was running short, and his readings were incomplete. By the time the afternoon sun slanted through the showroom windows, Joanna had found her rhythm. The VIP guests wouldn't arrive for hours, but her staff was already arranged like chess pieces across the marble floor. Sales associates in their perfect suits, mechanics in crisp uniforms, everyone positioned to demonstrate the natural order of things. "Mitchell," her voice carried across the showroom like a whip crack. "I need you to check the oil levels on the display vehicles. All of them. From underneath." Ethan looked up from where he'd been detailing the Lamborghini's rims. Around the showroom, conversations stuttered to a halt. Oil checks were performed in service bays, with lifts and proper equipment. Crawling under cars in a showroom was theater, the kind of performance designed to remind everyone exactly where they stood in the hierarchy. "Yes, ma'am." He set down his polishing cloth and retrieved the creeper from the supply closet. The wheeled platform looked like what it was, a prop in someone else's show. As he slid beneath the first car, the whispered conversations resumed above him. He could feel their amusement, their secondhand embarrassment, their relief that they weren't the ones being used for entertainment. The concrete was cold against his back, and the bright showroom lights created harsh shadows between the chassis components. But while they watched him perform humiliation, Ethan was learning. Each car had its own acoustic signature, its own thermal patterns. The Maserati's oil pump had a slight whine that suggested bearing wear. The Aston Martin's transmission ran 3 degrees warmer than spec. Information was everywhere, if you knew how to listen. Joanna's laughter echoed off the marble walls, bright and sharp. She was building toward something. He could feel it in the way she positioned herself, in the way she gathered an audience. Tonight's event wouldn't just be about selling cars. She was going to turn him into entertainment, and there wasn't a thing he could do about it except lie on his back and pretend he didn't understand exactly what was happening. Victoria Carter had seen enough boardrooms and showrooms to recognize the performance for what it was. She stood in the corner near the mahogany reception desk, her phone angled just right to capture the scene without drawing attention. The screen showed Joanna Sterling orchestrating humiliation like a conductor leading a particularly cruel symphony. "Absolutely fascinating leadership style," Victoria murmured into her phone, ostensibly responding to a text, but actually recording. Her followers would find this educational, a masterclass in how not to run a luxury business. Some people mistake cruelty for authority. The timestamp on her screen read 6:47 p.m. In her world, decisions worth 8 figures often came down to moments like this. Not the cars, not the profit margins, but the character of the people behind the brand. She'd built her collection by understanding that luxury wasn't just about objects. It was about the integrity of the experience. Around her, other VIP guests shifted uncomfortably. The Hendersons, who'd driven down from Malibu for the event, exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Dr. Martinez from the Aerospace Consortium had his arms crossed, his expression unreadable behind designer glasses. Victoria's phone buzzed with notifications. Her social media following had grown accustomed to her behind-the-scenes glimpses into the luxury market. Tonight, they were getting more than they'd bargained for. "This is either very clever theater," she whispered to the camera, "or we're watching someone destroy their own business in real time." She'd seen enough failing leaders to recognize another one, and Joanna Sterling was checking all the boxes. Ethan felt the weight of his daughter's stare from across the showroom. Lily sat in her corner, sketchpad forgotten, watching her father perform degradation for an audience of strangers in expensive suits. Her dark eyes held a confusion that cut deeper than any insult Joanna could devise. The concrete was rough against his knees as he moved from car to car, checking oil levels that didn't need checking, performing maintenance that had already been done by actual mechanics hours earlier. Each movement was choreographed humiliation, and everyone in the room understood the script, except his 8-year-old daughter. "Everything looks good under the Bentley, Miss Sterling," he called out, his voice steady despite the burning in his chest. Professional, invisible, exactly what was expected from someone wearing a name tag that read "detailing" in block letters. But Lily's face had changed. The hero worship that usually lit up her features when she watched him work had flickered and dimmed, replaced by something that looked dangerously close to embarrassment. She glanced around at the adults watching her father crawl under cars, then back at him, and for the first time, Ethan saw doubt in his daughter's eyes. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "Are you coming over here?" The fluorescent lights overhead created harsh shadows that made everything look institutional and cold. More VIP guests were arriving. He could hear the rumble of expensive engines in the parking lot, the sound of car doors closing like muffled applause. The look in Lily's eyes hurt worse than anything Joanna could say, because it carried the weight of a question he wasn't ready to answer. If he was really the man she thought he was, why was he letting this happen? More guests meant more witnesses, and Joanna was just getting started. The Ferrari's engine turned over with a confident roar, then died with a sickening wheeze. Joanna's hands tightened on the steering wheel as 30 VIP guests fell silent around the demonstration area. Phone cameras pivoted toward her like weapons, recording what was supposed to be her moment of technical mastery. "Just a moment," she said, her voice projecting confidence that her sweating palms betrayed. The air conditioning couldn't quite mask the smell of her own desperation, expensive perfume mixing with the metallic tang of fear. She turned the key again. The engine coughed, sputtered, and fell silent. Dashboard lights flickered in patterns that meant nothing to her, despite years of talking about horsepower and torque specs to impressed clients. The Ferrari was calling her bluff, and everyone could see it. "Perhaps we should," Dr. Martinez began, his voice diplomatic but pointed. No, just a small glitch," Joanna interrupted, trying the ignition again. Nothing. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. These Italian engines, you know how they are, temperamental. But she didn't know how they were. She'd built her empire on showmanship and sales psychology, not on understanding the machines that made it all possible. Now, with $300,000 worth of automotive pride refusing to start, that ignorance was about to cost her everything. Victoria Carter's phone was definitely recording now. Joanna could see the red light in her peripheral vision, capturing every second of failure for posterity. The billionaire's expression hadn't changed, but something in her posture suggested decisions being made, contracts being reconsidered. 30 phones were recording her failure in 4K, and the Ferrari sat beneath her like a very expensive, very public coffin for her reputation. Joanna stepped out of the silent Ferrari, her designer heels clicking against marble like a judge's gavel. The whispered conversations around the showroom had taken on that particular quality of vultures circling, polite, interested, and absolutely merciless. She needed to regain control, and she needed to do it now. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice carrying across the marble expanse with forced brightness. "I think we could all use a little entertainment while we wait for our technical team to address this minor issue." Her eyes swept the room and landed on exactly what she needed. Ethan Mitchell, still kneeling beside the Bentley with his oil-checking supplies. Perfect, invisible, disposable. "Mitchell," she called out, loud enough for every guest to hear. "Come here for a moment." Ethan stood slowly, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Around the showroom, conversations died as 30 pairs of expensive eyes turned to watch whatever show Joanna was about to produce. "This Ferrari," she said, gesturing toward the silent machine like a game show host revealing a prize, "has stumped our top 5 technicians. Factory specialists, independent experts, even our racing team consultant. Over $8,000 in diagnostic fees, and it still won't behave." The crowd murmured appreciatively. This was the kind of behind-the-scenes drama they paid premium prices to access. "But I'm feeling generous tonight," Joanna continued, her smile sharp as a scalpel. "Mitchell here has been admiring this car for months. Haven't you, Mitchell? Always finding excuses to clean around it, touch it, dream about it." Ethan said nothing, but Joanna was just hitting her stride. "So, here's my offer. Fix this Ferrari, and it's yours. Keys, title, everything. But when you fail, and we all know you will, you'll apologize to everyone here for wasting their time with your janitor's fantasies." She'd just bet her entire reputation on a minimum wage employee failing, and everyone in the room understood exactly what that meant. Ethan felt the weight of every gaze in the showroom pressing down on him like a physical thing. The marble beneath his feet seemed to tilt, the world reshaping itself around this moment that he'd never asked for but couldn't avoid. "Miss Sterling, I appreciate the offer, but—" "Daddy." Lily's voice cut through his careful deflection like a blade. She'd moved closer, her sketchpad clutched against her chest like armor. Her dark eyes held something he'd never seen there before, desperate hope mixed with terrifying faith. "Daddy, you can do it," she whispered, loud enough for the front row of guests to hear. "You always fix everything. You're the best at fixing things." The showroom fell silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant traffic on Rodeo Drive. Ethan looked down at his daughter, seeing himself reflected in her eyes. Not the night shift janitor the world saw, but the hero she'd always believed him to be. "Show them," she whispered, her small hand touching his arm. "Please, Daddy, show them." The Ferrari sat there like a challenge, like a test, like everything he'd ever been afraid to reach for, wrapped in Italian leather and carbon fiber. Around him, phones started recording, capturing this moment for whatever viral nightmare was about to unfold. 45 minutes to solve what 5 experts couldn't. 45 minutes to either vindicate his daughter's faith or destroy it forever. He stepped toward the Ferrari, and the entire trajectory of his life shifted beneath his feet. Victoria Carter's thumb moved across her phone screen, switching from photo mode to live stream. The notification popped up immediately. V. Carter Luxury is going live, and within seconds, her follower count began climbing. "Good evening, everyone," she murmured into the phone, angling it to capture both Ethan and the Ferrari. "We're witnessing something quite extraordinary at a Beverly Hills luxury dealership. A CEO has just challenged her night shift maintenance worker to fix a Ferrari that stumped multiple experts." The viewer count ticked upward, 347 viewers, 589, 1,204. Her audience loved behind-the-scenes luxury content, but this was something different, raw, unscripted, with the potential to either inspire or horrify. "The stakes," Victoria continued, her voice low but clear. "If he succeeds, he keeps the car. If he fails, public humiliation in front of 30 VIP guests and however many of you are watching right now." The comments started flooding in. "This is either going to be beautiful or brutal." "CEO looks like a shark. Go janitor dad, go. Someone's about to get exposed." Victoria panned the camera slightly, catching Joanna's expression, confident, predatory, completely certain of the outcome. Then back to Ethan, who was standing perfectly still beside the Ferrari, as if calculating odds no one else could see. 10,000 of you are watching now," Victoria whispered. "I have a feeling we're about to witness something that changes everything for someone in this room." The internet was watching, and there would be no hiding from whatever happened next. Ethan moved with the careful deliberation of someone who understood that every action was being recorded, analyzed, and judged. He walked to his cleaning cart, that humble symbol of his supposed station, and reached beneath the stack of microfiber cloths. His tablet emerged first, its screen reflecting the showroom lights like black water. Then the thermal imaging scanner, compact, professional grade, worth more than most people's monthly salary. Finally, the digital stethoscope, its cord coiled with the precision of someone who used tools as extensions of themselves. Around the showroom, the murmur of conversation shifted in tone. These weren't cleaning supplies. This was diagnostic equipment that belonged in university engineering labs, not in the hands of someone wearing a name tag that read detailing. "Interesting tools for a janitor," Dr. Martinez observed, his voice carrying the authority of someone who recognized precision instruments when he saw them. Joanna's expression had changed, the predatory confidence faltering as she processed what everyone else was seeing. Professional-grade equipment. Expensive equipment. Equipment that suggested months or years of investment in capabilities she'd never imagined existed in her building. "Where did you get those?" she demanded, her voice sharper now, tinged with something that might have been panic. Ethan powered up the tablet, his fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Data cascaded down the display. Months of thermal readings, acoustic signatures, diagnostic patterns. A database that would have impressed university professors and factory technicians alike. "Saved up," he said quietly, not looking away from the screen. "Learned on my own time." 42 minutes to prove that everything everyone assumed about him was wrong. And he'd just revealed that he'd been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone realized. She hadn't known he owned better diagnostic tools than her own mechanics, and that ignorance was about to cost her everything. Ethan approached the Ferrari with the methodical precision of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. The showroom had fallen into a silence so complete that the soft whir of air conditioning sounded like machinery in a cathedral. He placed the digital stethoscope against the engine block, closing his eyes to focus on sounds that others would miss. The crowd shifted restlessly. They'd expected quick visual checks, maybe some theatrical engine revving. Instead, they were watching something that looked disturbingly like actual expertise, slow, methodical, and completely confident. Through the rubber earpieces, Ethan heard the Ferrari's mechanical heartbeat. Each component sang its own frequency, the fuel pump's steady rhythm, the cooling system's whisper, the intake manifold's subtle harmonics. But there, beneath the normal symphony, was the discordant note he'd been tracking for weeks. He moved the stethoscope systematically across the engine bay, mapping sound the way a cartographer charts unexplored territory. The thermal scanner came next, its infrared beam painting invisible heat signatures across metal surfaces. The tablet recorded everything, building a three-dimensional picture of mechanical stress and acoustic anomalies. "Interesting technique," Dr. Martinez murmured, stepping closer. As a mechanical engineering professor who consulted for Ferrari's racing division, she recognized methodology when she saw it. Very systematic. The crowd's murmur died completely. When university professors started paying attention, something significant was happening. Ethan's movements were too confident for someone just guessing, too precise, too purposeful. Every gesture spoke of knowledge earned through years of study, not luck stumbled upon in a moment of desperation. His equipment hummed quietly as it worked, and the sound carried an authority that expensive suits and marble floors couldn't match. Dr. Elena Santos had spent 15 years teaching mechanical engineering at UCLA and another decade consulting for luxury automotive manufacturers. She knew what advanced diagnostics looked like, and what she was witnessing shouldn't have been possible from someone the dealership kept invisible. "Excuse me," she said, moving closer to observe Ethan's process. "That harmonic mapping technique, where did you learn it?" Ethan glanced up from the thermal scanner, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead, despite the showroom's perfect climate control. "Community college, mostly, then research on my own time." "Community college doesn't teach acoustic thermal differential analysis," Dr. Santos said quietly. "That's graduate-level methodology." Around them, the crowd pressed closer. Victoria's live stream viewer count had climbed past 15,000, the comments flowing too fast to read. What had started as entertainment was transforming into something else, a demonstration of expertise that called every assumption into question. "The harmonic frequencies you're mapping," Dr. Santos continued, her voice carrying across the marble space. "Those patterns suggest mechanical resonance at very specific thermal thresholds. That's quite sophisticated." Joanna's face had gone pale. The game she'd designed to humiliate an employee was becoming a public validation of skills she'd never known existed in her own building. Worse, it was being documented by a mechanical engineering professor whose opinion carried weight throughout the luxury automotive industry. "Ma'am," Ethan said respectfully, not pausing in his work, "I think I've found something." Dr. Santos leaned closer, and her next words changed everything. "Show me." She'd never seen anyone map engine harmonics like that outside of university research labs, and she wanted to understand exactly what she was witnessing. Ethan's tablet screen filled with data that told a story 3 months in the making. Every night shift, every stolen moment between cleaning tasks, every careful measurement had led to this pattern of acoustic and thermal signatures that finally made sense. "Here," he said, tilting the tablet so Dr. Santos could see the scrolling waveforms. "This frequency spike at 2,847 revolutions per minute, but only when the intake manifold reaches exactly 73 degrees Celsius. It's been consistent for 12 weeks. Dr. Santos studied the screen, her expression shifting from curiosity to genuine surprise. "This is longitudinal data collection. You've been tracking this systematically?" "Every night I could," Ethan confirmed. "The pattern was too precise to be random. Something was causing harmonic resonance at that exact intersection of thermal and rotational stress." The tablet displayed months of careful documentation, temperature readings, acoustic signatures, vibration patterns. Each data point represented hours of unpaid research, driven by the kind of obsessive precision that separated true understanding from surface knowledge. "And your conclusion?" Dr. Santos asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected where the evidence led. Ethan touched the screen, highlighting a specific pattern cluster. Structural failure in the intake mounting system, something small enough that static diagnostics won't catch it, but consistent enough to create predictable resonance under specific conditions. The crowd had gone completely silent. Victoria's phone captured every word, broadcasting to 20,000 viewers who were witnessing something unprecedented. A night shift janitor demonstrating engineering analysis that impressed a university professor. But the tablet screen showed exactly what he'd hoped never to find. Proof that he'd been right about everything, and that fixing it would require skills everyone had told him he didn't possess. Joanna's voice cut through the technical discussion like a chainsaw through silk. "Enough of this amateur hour theater," she announced, her desperation disguised as authority. "Mitchell, you're using equipment you probably can't even afford. This whole display is—" "Actually," Dr. Santos interrupted, her professorial tone carrying academic weight that silenced the showroom. "Mr. Mitchell's methodology is more sophisticated than what most factory technicians use. His data collection protocols would pass peer review in any engineering journal." The words hit Joanna like physical blows. Peer review, engineering journals, academic validation for the man she'd spent months treating like animated furniture. "That's impossible," she stammered. "He's a janitor. He cleans things. He doesn't—" "Ma'am," Dr. Santos said firmly, "I've consulted for Ferrari's racing division for 8 years. I recognize advanced diagnostic technique when I see it. What Mr. Mitchell has documented here represents months of careful analysis using legitimate engineering principles." Victoria's live stream exploded with comments as viewers watched a mechanical engineering professor publicly validate the expertise of someone a luxury car CEO had dismissed as incompetent. The viewer count had climbed past 25,000. Joanna looked around desperately, seeking support from her staff, her guests, anyone who might help her regain control of a situation that was spiraling beyond her worst nightmares. But the evidence was undeniable, the expert witness unimpeachable, and the internet was watching every second of her authority collapse in real time. The professor had just chosen the janitor's side, and there was no coming back from that. Ethan's hands moved with surgical precision as he began disassembling the intake manifold components. Each bolt came free with the exact torque required, each connection separated with the care of someone who understood that Italian engineering tolerances left no room for error. "The harmonic resonance suggests a microfracture in one of the mounting brackets," he explained, his voice steady despite 28 minutes remaining on Joanna's arbitrary deadline. Small enough that visual inspection wouldn't catch it, but large enough to create vibration under specific thermal stress. Dr. Santos watched his technique with growing interest. "And you're checking the tertiary mounting assembly first because that's where the stress concentration would be highest when the intake reaches 73 degrees under load," Ethan replied, lifting away the manifold cover. "The thermal expansion creates maximum flex right here." His fingers found the aluminum bracket, a component no larger than a smartphone, tucked deep in the engine bay, where only someone who knew exactly what to look for could access it. He lifted it carefully, angling it toward the showroom lights. "There," he said quietly. Dr. Santos leaned in with a magnifying glass from her consultation kit. The fracture was barely visible, a hairline crack less than 2 millimeters long, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look and had the right equipment to see it. "Stress fracture in the mounting boss," she confirmed, her voice carrying across the silent showroom. "Classic failure pattern for aluminum under cyclic thermal loading. Textbook engineering failure that would be nearly impossible to diagnose without longitudinal data collection." 25,000 people watched through Victoria's stream as a janitor found exactly what he'd predicted, exactly where he'd said it would be. The fracture was invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. And Ethan had known for months. Dr. Santos pulled out her university-grade digital microscope, the kind used in materials research labs to analyze component failures at the molecular level. The crowd pressed closer as she positioned it over the fractured bracket, her movements carrying the authority of someone whose opinion could make or break engineering careers. The microscope's screen displayed the fracture in devastating detail, stress lines radiating from the point of failure like a spiderweb, metal fatigue patterns that told the story of months of thermal cycling, expansion and contraction wearing away at aluminum until it reached the breaking point. "Classic intergranular stress corrosion," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of 15 years in academic research. The fracture propagation follows textbook patterns for aluminum 6061 under cyclic thermal loading. Mr. Mitchell's thermal mapping data predicted this failure with remarkable precision. She adjusted the microscope's magnification, bringing the failure into even sharper focus. The stress concentration point is exactly where his acoustic analysis indicated, at the junction between the mounting boss and the support web. This is graduate-level materials analysis. Victoria's live stream captured every word, broadcasting to 30,000 viewers who were witnessing something unprecedented. A university professor confirming that a night shift janitor had solved an engineering problem that had stumped factory specialists. Furthermore, Dr. Santos continued, the systematic data collection Mr. Mitchell performed over multiple months demonstrates a level of scientific rigor that would meet publication standards in peer-reviewed engineering journals. The showroom had fallen into complete silence except for the soft whir of recording equipment. Joanna stood frozen, watching 15 years of assumed superiority crumble in real time. The math was perfect, the diagnosis was flawless, and the internet was bearing witness to expertise where no one had expected to find it. Victoria adjusted her phone's angle to capture both the microscopic evidence and the crowd's reaction. Her live stream had become an inadvertent masterclass in recognizing hidden talent, and her audience was hanging on every word. "What we're witnessing here," she said quietly into the camera, "is the difference between credentials and competence. 32,000 of you are watching a man with community college education demonstrate engineering analysis that's embarrassing Ferrari's own diagnostic team." The comment stream was moving too fast to read, but the sentiment was clear. This had transcended entertainment and become something approaching social justice. Viewers were sharing the stream across platforms, spreading word of the janitor who was schooling luxury car experts in their own field. "For those just joining," Victoria continued, "a Beverly Hills luxury car CEO challenged her maintenance worker to fix a Ferrari that 5 factory specialists couldn't diagnose. He just found the exact failure point using equipment he bought with his own money and techniques he learned on his own time." Dr. Santos looked up from the microscope. "Mr. Mitchell, your analysis is not only correct, but demonstrates a level of systematic thinking I wish I saw more often in graduate students. This is exceptional diagnostic work." The validation was academic, public, and unassailable. A university professor was on record in front of thousands of witnesses, confirming that the man Joanna had dismissed as worthless possessed expertise that exceeded industry standards. Victoria's phone screen showed the viewer count climbing toward 40,000 as word spread across social media platforms. This wasn't just about cars anymore. It was about dignity, recognition, and the dangerous assumptions people made about worth based on job titles. The internet was watching a masterclass in mechanical diagnosis, and the teacher was someone who'd been invisible until this moment. Ethan opened his tool case, not the cheap hardware store set everyone expected, but precision instruments that belonged in factory service departments. Torque wrenches calibrated to exact specifications, temperature-sensitive compounds, replacement brackets manufactured to Ferrari's own tolerances. "The repair requires thermal cycling to ensure proper metallurgical bonding," he explained, installing the new bracket with movements that spoke of hundreds of hours studying Italian engineering specifications. "The aluminum needs to reach 68 degrees before final torque application to prevent stress concentration at the mounting points." His infrared thermometer tracked temperature rise as the engine bay gradually warmed. Each bolt received exactly 22 foot-pounds of torque applied in the crossing pattern specified by Ferrari's technical documentation, information he'd memorized during long nights researching automotive engineering principles. "Impressive," Dr. Santos observed. "You're following factory protocols exactly. Most independent mechanics skip the thermal cycling step. The engineering tolerances don't care what shortcuts people want to take," Ethan replied, checking his measurements against the tablet's specifications. "Italian metallurgy requires specific thermal conditions for proper stress distribution. 28,000 people watched through Victoria's stream as his hands moved with the confidence of someone who understood that precision wasn't optional. It was the difference between repair and failure. Every movement demonstrated master-level expertise earned through years of study, not luck or intuition. The tools belonged to someone who'd invested serious money in understanding his craft. The knowledge came from someone who'd spent countless unpaid hours learning engineering principles that most people assumed he couldn't comprehend. His hands moved like he'd performed this exact repair hundreds of times, and the crowd was beginning to understand that maybe he had. Joanna watched her empire dissolve in real time, each moment of Ethan's competence destroying another piece of the narrative she'd built her authority on. The comments flooding Victoria's livestream were brutal. Viewers weren't just celebrating the janitor's expertise, they were condemning her treatment of him. "This has to be some kind of setup," she said desperately, her voice carrying across the showroom. "There's no way he learned this on his own. Someone's helping him, coaching him." "Ma'am," Dr. Santos interrupted, her academic authority cutting through Joanna's desperation like a scalpel. "I've been observing Mr. Mitchell's methodology for the past 20 minutes. His diagnostic approach, his tool selection, his understanding of metallurgical principles. This represents years of systematic learning, not coaching." The professor's words carried the weight of peer review, of academic standards, of expertise that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Victoria's stream now had 45,000 viewers, and every one of them was witnessing the public destruction of assumptions about education, intelligence, and worth. Furthermore, Dr. Santos continued relentlessly, his data collection protocols demonstrate scientific rigor that exceeds what I see from many graduate students. This is legitimate engineering analysis performed by someone with genuine understanding of mechanical systems. Joanna looked around the showroom desperately, seeking allies among her staff, her guests, anyone who might help salvage what remained of her credibility. But the evidence was mathematical, the expert witness unimpeachable, and the internet was documenting every second of her professional annihilation. The professor was systematically destroying her last chance at maintaining any vestige of authority, and doing it with the calm precision of someone stating observable facts. The Ferrari's engine turned over with the smooth confidence of Italian engineering functioning exactly as designed. Ethan held the RPM steady at 2,000, watching the thermal readouts climb toward the critical threshold where the old bracket had failed. 2,847 revolutions per minute, 73 degrees Celsius, the exact conditions that had caused months of intermittent failures. The engine purred with mechanical perfection, every component working in harmony, the harmonic resonance that had plagued the system completely eliminated. Ethan shifted through the test protocol. Acceleration under load, thermal cycling, the precise conditions that had previously triggered failure. Nothing. Perfect operation. Dr. Santos monitored her own diagnostic equipment, comparing readings to baseline specifications. "Engine parameters are exceeding factory standards," she announced. "Harmonic vibration is within tolerance. Thermal management is optimal. Power output is actually higher than specification." The showroom erupted in applause as Victoria's livestream captured the moment of complete vindication. 48,000 viewers had watched a night shift janitor accomplish what 5 expensive specialists had failed to achieve. "Time!" someone called out, though Ethan's deadline still had minutes remaining. The Ferrari responded to every input with the eager precision that made Italian supercars legendary. Throttle response was immediate. Acceleration was silk smooth. Every system functioned with the mechanical poetry that $300,000 was supposed to buy. 18 minutes ahead of schedule, the repair was complete, the diagnosis proven, and the expertise demonstrated beyond any possible doubt. The Ferrari purred like it was brand new, and everyone in the room understood that they'd witnessed something extraordinary, the moment when hidden genius refused to stay hidden anymore. Victoria Carter stepped forward, her phone still streaming to 52,000 viewers who had witnessed something that would be shared and reshared across every social platform by morning. The weight of what she'd just documented was settling in, not just mechanical expertise, but a complete dismantling of assumptions about education, intelligence, and human worth. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice carrying across the marble showroom with the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that moved markets. "I've been watching your work for the past hour, and I'm prepared to offer you a consulting contract with my Automotive Research Foundation. She pulled out her phone, switching from live stream to contract interface. $50,000 for a 6-month diagnostic consulting position with the possibility of permanent placement at our advanced engineering facility in Pasadena. The numbers echoed across the silent showroom. $50,000, more than Ethan had made in the past 3 years combined. The kind of money that meant Lily could go to good schools, that medical bills wouldn't keep him awake at night, that dreams deferred didn't have to mean dreams denied forever. Dr. Santos has agreed to supervise your transition into formal research applications, Victoria continued. Your acoustic thermal mapping technique could revolutionize how we diagnose complex mechanical failures. Around the showroom, phones captured every word. The internet was witnessing the real-time transformation of a life, the moment when years of invisible expertise finally received the recognition it deserved. I don't need an answer tonight, Victoria said, though her tone suggested the offer wouldn't remain open indefinitely. But I've seen enough to know that talent like yours shouldn't be wasted cleaning cars. She just offered him more money than he'd made in 3 years, and everyone understood that this moment was changing everything. Joanna Sterling reached into her jacket pocket with hands that trembled, despite her efforts at maintaining composure. The Ferrari key fob felt impossibly heavy, weighted with everything she was about to lose, not just a car, but the foundation of authority she'd spent 15 years building. The terms were clear, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Around her, 50 phones recorded every syllable, every micro-expression, every second of her public reckoning. You fixed it. The car is yours. The key transfer happened in complete silence, except for the soft whir of recording equipment. Metal touch palm with the finality of surrender, of assumptions dying, of consequences arriving exactly when they'd been earned. Victoria's live stream captured it all. The moment when arrogance met competence and lost decisively. Comments flooded the screen faster than anyone could read them, but the sentiment was universal, justice, long delayed, finally being served. Additionally, Joanna continued, the words dragged from her like confessions under interrogation, I owe you and everyone here an apology. My behavior tonight was unprofessional, but the damage was spreading beyond the showroom in real time. Her phone buzzed with notifications, the Hendersons canceling their Maserati order, Dr. Martinez withdrawing from the Aerospace Consortium deal, clients across Beverly Hills reconsidering their associations with Prestige Motors. The viral video was already being shared across platforms, tagged with phrases like toxic boss, hidden genius, and karma in action. Her empire, built on the assumption that respect could be demanded rather than earned, was crumbling one notification at a time. The keys felt like surrendering her entire kingdom, and the internet was making sure everyone knew exactly what she'd lost and why. Lily Mitchell broke free from her corner perch and ran across the marble showroom, her sketchpad cluttering to the floor, forgotten in the rush of understanding that changed everything she thought she knew about her father. Her small arms wrapped around his waist as cameras captured the moment, not for viral content, but for the pure human connection that made all the technical expertise matter. She pressed her face against his work shirt, breathing in the familiar scent of honest labor and quiet dignity. "Daddy, you really are a superhero," she whispered, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "You were always a superhero, weren't you?" Around them, the crowd's energy shifted from entertainment to something deeper, recognition that they'd witnessed not just technical competence, but the vindication of a relationship, the restoration of a daughter's faith in her father's worth. Ethan knelt down to her level, his hand still carrying traces of engine oil despite everything that had changed in the past hour. "I was just trying to learn things, sweetheart, trying to get better at fixing problems." "But you knew all along," she said, her 8-year-old logic cutting through adult complications with perfect clarity. "You knew you could fix anything. That's why you had all those tools, why you stayed late to practice. You were getting ready." The revelation hit him like physical force, that his daughter had understood his dedication better than anyone, had seen through the job title to the man beneath, had never doubted his capabilities even when he doubted them himself. Victoria's stream caught it all. The moment when technical vindication became personal validation, when a father realized that the most important person in his world had never stopped believing in him. Daddy had been a superhero all along, and now everyone else finally knew it too. Ethan felt the weight of the Ferrari keys in one hand and his daughter's trust in the other, trying to process a transformation that had happened too quickly for emotional adjustment. The showroom around him buzzed with conversations about opportunities, contracts, research partnerships, a future materializing out of what had been, an hour ago, the simple desire to remain invisible. "Mr. Mitchell," Dr. Santos approached with a business card that looked impossibly official. "I'm serious about the university consulting opportunity. Your diagnostic methodology could be invaluable for our automotive engineering program. We could formalize your techniques, perhaps develop them into publishable research." The business card was real, UCLA Department of Mechanical Engineering, with contact information that represented validation from institutions he'd only dreamed of accessing. Real recognition, real opportunities, real escape from the economic margins that had defined his life since his wife's death. But as the possibilities multiplied around him, Ethan's focus remained on Lily, on protecting her from the chaos of sudden change, on making sure that whatever came next preserved the stability she needed. "I need to think about all of this," he said quietly, addressing Victoria's offer, Dr. Santos's proposition, and the dozen other opportunities that were suddenly emerging from a half-century of being overlooked. "My daughter comes first. Whatever I decide has to be right for her." The Ferrari keys felt solid and real, proof that competence eventually surfaces despite every effort to suppress it. But more important was the look in Lily's eyes. Pride instead of confusion, confidence instead of doubt, certainty that her father was exactly who she'd always known him to be. Everything had changed in 1 hour, but the most important thing, the bond between father and daughter, had only grown stronger. The most important thing stayed the same, even as the future opened in ways he'd never dared imagine. Dr. Santos pulled out her laptop, the UCLA logo glinting under the showroom lights, as she opened a program application that looked official and impossibly legitimate. "Mr. Mitchell, I want you to understand what I'm offering. This isn't charity or social media theater. It's recognition of genuine expertise that could benefit automotive research." She turned the screen toward him, showing course catalogs, research labs, testing facilities that belonged in a different world from night shift cleaning. "Our acoustic diagnostic program needs someone with your practical experience. Graduate students have theoretical knowledge, but you have something more valuable, intuitive understanding of how machines actually behave." Ethan studied the screen, seeing pathways he'd never imagined possible. "You want me to teach?" "I want you to research," Dr. Santos corrected. "Document your techniques, refine them, share them with engineers who could apply your methods across multiple industries. Your acoustic thermal mapping could revolutionize failure analysis." The weight of legitimacy was almost overwhelming. University credentials, research facilities, the chance to turn years of solitary learning into formal knowledge that could help others understand the mechanical world the way he'd learned to hear it. "The semester starts in 2 weeks," she continued. "That gives you time to decide, to arrange your family situation. But Mr. Mitchell, talent like yours shouldn't stay hidden." Around them, the showroom was still buzzing with the aftermath of viral vindication, but this conversation felt different, quieter, more substantial, focused on building something lasting rather than just celebrating what had been revealed. She wanted to learn his acoustic mapping technique, and that meant his years of invisible study had created something valuable enough to teach others. Ethan sat on the showroom's marble steps with Lily beside him, the Ferrari keys resting between them like a bridge between the life they'd known and the possibilities spreading ahead. The evening air carried the scent of jasmine from the landscaping, mixing with the lingering trace of engine oil that had become part of his identity. "Daddy, what does this mean for us?" Lily asked, her 8-year-old directness cutting through all the adult complications to the heart of what mattered. "Are we going to be different now?" Ethan considered the question with the care it deserved. "We'll have more choices, sweetheart. Better choices. I might go back to school, learn how to teach other people the things I figured out on my own. Will you still fix cars? Different cars. Harder problems. Maybe I'll help design cars that don't break as easily." He picked up the Ferrari key, feeling its weight. "This car means we don't have to worry about money for school, for doctors, for the things you need." Lily leaned against his shoulder, processing changes that would reshape everything she'd known about their life. "But you'll still be my daddy, the one who knows how to fix everything." "That's the only thing that won't change," Ethan promised, understanding that despite all the opportunities emerging from tonight's vindication, his most important job remained exactly the same. "I'll always be your dad. I'll always try to fix whatever's broken." She reached for the Ferrari key, holding it up to catch the showroom lights. "Can we drive it to my school tomorrow? Just once?" Ethan laughed, the first genuine laughter he'd felt in months. "We can drive it wherever you want, sweetheart, wherever we decide to go." She understood what this meant better than most adults, that recognition changes everything except the things that matter most. Joanna Sterling sat in her office above the showroom, watching her phone screen fill with cancellation notifications as 15 years of reputation collapsed in real time. The Hendersons gone, Dr. Martinez's aerospace consortium withdrawn, 3 other major collectors who'd been considering purchases suddenly unavailable. The viral video had already been shared 50,000 times across platforms, tagged with phrases that would haunt her Google search results for years. "Toxic boss humiliated. CEO versus janitor. You won't believe what happens." The hidden genius she never saw coming. Her landline rang with the mechanical insistence of bad news. The bank, calling about credit line reviews. The franchise coordinator, requesting an emergency meeting. Insurance companies suddenly interested in risk assessments for businesses with public relations challenges. She'd built her empire on the assumption that authority came from position rather than competence, that respect could be demanded rather than earned. Tonight had proven how fragile that foundation really was. The comments under Victoria's live stream were particularly brutal, dissecting not just her behavior, but her fundamental approach to leadership. 58,000 viewers had watched her publicly lose a bet she should never have made against an opponent whose capabilities she'd never bothered to understand. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. 3 reporters calling for comment. Board meeting moved to tomorrow morning. Suggest you prepare statement. The empire she'd built on arrogance was crumbling in real time, one notification at a time, and everyone could see exactly why it was happening and who was responsible. But perhaps the most damaging element wasn't the business consequences. It was the growing awareness that someone extraordinary had been working in her building for months, and she'd never noticed because she'd never thought to look. 6 months later, the Ferrari's engine note echoed off the walls of Roosevelt Elementary's parking lot, not with the aggressive roar of showmanship, but with the confident purr of machinery maintained by someone who understood every component, every system, every reason why Italian engineering deserved respect. Ethan pulled into a space between sensible minivans and practical SUVs, the supercar looking exotic but not out of place. Success, he'd learned, wasn't about intimidating anyone. It was about having choices, about being able to provide the stability his daughter needed without sacrificing his own dignity. "Ready for school, Dr. Mitchell?" Lily asked from the passenger seat, using the title she'd adopted since his consulting work with UCLA had begun earning recognition throughout the automotive research community. "Just Daddy," Ethan corrected gently, helping her gather her backpack and the presentation materials for today's career day. Always just Daddy. Other parents recognized him now, not from the dealership incident, though the viral video still surfaced occasionally in social media algorithms, but from newspaper articles about innovative diagnostic techniques, from university press releases about practical applications of acoustic analysis. Respect earned through competence, not spectacle. Mrs. Henderson from Lily's class approached as they walked toward the school entrance. "Mr. Mitchell, I wanted to thank you again for fixing my husband's car last month. The dealership had given up on it." Recognition came in moments like these, quiet acknowledgments that expertise shared generously created value for everyone. The consulting work paid well, but the satisfaction came from solving problems that others had abandoned. Success looked different than he'd ever imagined, less dramatic, more sustainable, built on foundation of knowledge rather than the accident of viral fame. Inside classroom 3B, Lily stood at the front of 24 8-year-olds, her presentation poster showing before and after pictures from that night at the dealership, her father kneeling beside a silent Ferrari, then standing beside the same car with its engine running perfectly. "My daddy teaches people at the university how to listen to cars," she explained with the confidence of someone whose faith had been publicly vindicated, but before that, he was invisible. People thought he just cleaned things, but really, he was learning how to fix problems nobody else could solve. She clicked to the next slide, A photo of Ethan with Dr. Santos in the UCLA research lab, surrounded by diagnostic equipment and students eager to learn techniques that had emerged from community college classrooms and years of patient observation. Sometimes heroes look like janitors until they get their chance to shine. Lily continued, her words carrying the wisdom of someone who'd learned that worth isn't determined by job titles or other people's assumptions. My daddy says the most important thing is to keep learning, even when nobody thinks you're smart enough to understand. The classroom was silent except for the soft whir of the smartboard's projection system. 24 children absorbed a lesson that would stay with them longer than multiplication tables or spelling tests. That intelligence comes in forms society doesn't always recognize. That dignity belongs to everyone willing to work for it. He still fixes cars, Lily concluded, but now he teaches other people how to listen to them too. And sometimes when we drive the Ferrari to school, I remember that heroes can be anywhere, doing any job, if they just keep learning and never give up. From the back of the classroom, Ethan watched his daughter share wisdom that adults struggled to understand, that recognition matters less than competence, that respect, earned through expertise, creates value for everyone, that the best victories are the ones that lift others along the way. Sometimes heroes look like janitors until they get their chance to shine, and sometimes the most important lessons come from the people society teaches us not to see.